Welcome back to the channel. I'm Brian from Apex Auction Car Reconditioning. A fun video today. And this was inspired by one of our young employees that wanted to know what I recommend for an entry-level sports car, but under 10 grand. And I come across a lot of these at the auctions, the public auto auctions and the dealer auto auctions, and also Copart and IAA. But I'm kind of really thinking of what I've come across at the public auto auctions. I'm going to give my top 5 and maybe a bonus. And these are sports cars that are entry level for around $7,000. Now, I have to mention these are going to be just maybe barely under 100,000 miles. You're looking at early 2000s. But I'm going to zero in on cars that are 25 years old or younger, and also those that are two-seaters, and mostly convertibles, either hard top or soft top. There's going to be one on this list that is not a convertible, and I'm not sure if it might come in a convertible form. But these are all actually sports cars that I have owned. One not for very long because I just didn't enjoy it. But I want to share then my driving experience with them and compare the driving experience with the different vehicles. So I'm excited about the video because I love sports cars. I love the entry-level sports cars. They are out there for 7 grand, sometimes even a little bit less. But your target area between 7 and 10 grand will give you a really fun and decent sports car. Let's get to the video. The first car on my list, these aren't going to be in order from best to worst. These are just going to be in whatever random order I want to talk about. And we're going to start with the Z3. And you know what? Let's throw in the BMW Z4 as well. 2000 to 2008, you're going to be able to find for around 7,000 or so. The BMW Z4 had a 3.0 liter inline 6, 255 horsepower. They also had a 3.0 twin turbocharged inline 6 with 300 horsepower. Both models were rear wheel drive, 0 to 60 in about 5.6 seconds. The curb weight, you're looking at about 3,241 pounds. New that vehicle somewhere around 48,000 back then would probably be close to 100,000 in today's capital. Convertible soft top is the one I had. It was silver with black interior, and I never had a problem with the top on that one. Naturally aspirated. When I look for a sports car, I'm going to look for one that is naturally aspirated. These are going to have the smaller engines, and I don't want them overloaded with turbos and superchargers and all kinds of stuff, because then those little tiny engines are going through a hell of a lot of stress and just absolutely screaming. This car here, by the way, and I've had almost all of the sports cars except for one, the one I didn't have very long, and I'll share that with you. I've had through the winter time, and I've had to start. Why? I've had to start them in the winter time and they're not stored. Well, I store them here in the detail shop, and they get stored overnight and during the weekend, but during the day when we're working in here, I like to take them outside so we have more room in here to work, if that makes sense. So at the end of the day, after sitting a full day out in the cold wind, I would have to start them to bring them back in for the night or the weekend. There was only one that started every single time in the freezing cold, 0, 10 degrees, 20 degrees, and that was the Z4. All of the other ones needed a jump start or just had a hell of a time starting in cold weather. The BMW Z4, I popped in there, it fired right up, I could take it in and out, and I really enjoyed that. It seemed like the power band on the Z3 and the Z4 were between 4,000 and 6,000 RPM. Really not a whole lot of power, decent amount, but that power was, you could feel that power between 4 and 6K RPM. The thing that is unique about the Z3 and the Z4 is you're practically sitting on the rear axle. If you look at a side view of all the other cars that I'm mentioning here today, the seating is positioned back and you have this really long front end. Now that also makes for a unique ride, and I had all of these out on the back roads because I live on the back roads and I love to drive these sports cars on the back roads. And it just was a weird feeling having that long front end out in front of you and you're taking these curvy roads, and it just seemed like there was a little bit of a delay on the turn, and it just felt weird to be that far back in a sports car. Another car I had like that, which was more expensive and way out of this league, was the Mercedes GTR. You're way back on the transaxle, and you have this extremely long front end, and it just felt so weird. It was fun, exhilarating, but you know, it wasn't like you were sitting on a dime and turning like some of the other sports cars. So, early 2000s Z3 or Z4 BMW, fun, entry-level sports cars. So again, this list is, these are 5 or 6 that I recommend. And if the videos go well and you want, I can give you 5 or 6 that I don't recommend that are out there. So let's go to number 2 on my list, and that is going to be the Mercedes SLK. A couple trim packages available: the 200 compressor at a 1.8 liter supercharged, the SLK 350 at a 3.5 liter V6, and the AMG had the 5.5 liter V8 with a curb weight of 3,215 pounds. Now the one I had was a hardtop that was in many different folding pieces. And because of that complicated top, I never had one where the top worked throughout the whole period that I owned it. Always had to work on the top. Why? Because so many moving parts, but also they were hydraulic fluid driven or mechanically moved with hydraulic fluid. Leaks all the time. Sometimes I would have a leak above me, come down. You have hydraulic fluid leak on you, it's going to stain your clothing, the seats, or hydraulic leaks in the back, and just pumps. And I would prefer the cable tops, mechanically pulled by a cable. I prefer the manual tops. Some of these will have a top where you just have to clip it and fold it in yourself, put the top down, and get the flap down over top of that, or the cover, and you're good to go, and you could do that in mere seconds. If it starts to rain, you could pull over and get this done quickly. Driving experience with the SLK, it felt, or it seemed heavy to my memory. I think it is one of the heavier cars on this list. I think it's over 3,000 pounds, and you could feel that heft in the turns. It did a decent job with the turning, but you could feel that weight, almost like a little bit of a rocking ship. It was a slight feeling, but out of all the sports cars, I remember that one having that kind of that topsy-turvy feel to it. Now, new these are probably around 50K back in the early 2000s. Again, you're reaching 100K in today's times. And this actually, for the small sports car and two-seater, this had what felt to be the most spacious cabin sitting in it. There are some that really felt squeezed and tight, and I'll mention them later. But from my recollection, this one had the most open feel to it, is the best way I can describe it, especially when the top was down. And I had a hell of a fun time with the SLK that I had. I had no mechanical problems with that one. These are actually quite reliable, the motors that are in the SLKs, if they're maintained. When it comes to Mercedes, I have a video dedicated on Mercedes models, makes to stay away from and run like hell, and then ones that I recommend. So stay tuned for that one. Number 3 on my list, and again, they're in random order, is the old, reliable, entry-level sports car. Yes, the MX-5 or Mazda Miata. The NC generation, a 2.0 liter inline 4-cylinder, 170 horsepower, 140 foot-pounds of torque, Transmissions, 5-speed manual, 6-speed manual, 6-speed automatic, and weighed in at 2,441 pounds. You get one for around $7,000 or even cheaper these days, but they're in such high commodity, they're seeked out. You're looking at maybe $7,000 or more in my area. From what I remember, this is going to be one or two of the lightest in the group. Now let me kind of explain the driving experience with the Mazda Miata. Not a whole lot of horsepower there. As we go over the specs for each car, you'll notice that as well. So what I loved about the Mazda Miata was you couldn't rely on the power. You had to learn your driving lines or how to carry speed out of the corners, if that makes sense, on the back roads or on a course. I have the Pocono Raceway near me, guys, and sometimes they open up the infield. You go a portion of the way around the outside track, but then you come inside and you have these real windy turns like on a back road. And you could take any car there. You have to sign insurance waivers and all kinds of stuff, and there's a fee, of course. But you could take their car, sometimes you could take your own car. And with the Miata and another one I'm going to be talking about soon here in the video, without the power, if you wanted to keep up, other cars and makes and models are going to be pulling away on the Miata on the straights, and they did. But guess what? I caught up with them, and sometimes more going into the corners. If we're talking about a racetrack or windy roads that have more curves and straights, the Mazda Miata is going to do very, very well. Where the heavier vehicles, the SLK, and some of the other ones I'm going to be talking about, up next, you can rely on that power if you weren't very good with the lines of curves and turns of the raceway. Let's talk about sitting in the vehicle. Some of them, like I said, the SLK felt the most spacious. Sitting in the Miata, I felt the most cramped. And it seemed like if you were tall, and I'm not, I'm only 5'9", but if you're taller than maybe 5'10" to 6 feet tall, you would either have to scooch up and look over the top of the windshield or kind of scooch down. It was just very cramped. It felt very cramped from what I remember. So the Mazda Miata is going to be second to last in this group when it comes to power, and you had to rely on your driving skill for this one and another one that's coming up soon. The interior and exterior were simple in design and material. Made it probably the cheapest of all in this group to maintain and get parts for and work on. The rest of these are going to get a little salty to maintain them, keep them on the road, buy parts for them, and fix them. Number 4 on my list is going to be an interesting one, and I do see them. There's two vehicles that you almost have interchangeable parts with this little tiny sports car. And I'm talking about the early 2000s Pontiac Solstice or the Saturn Sky. The base was a 2.4-liter naturally aspirated, which I prefer, 4-cylinder. The GXP was turbocharged 4-cylinder, 260 horsepower. Transmission, 5-speed manual or 5-speed automatic, and a curb weight of 2,860 pounds. These are very similar, very same price range, both GM. And the first thing I remember with those, I had the Sky, I didn't have the Pontiac. The cheap GM interior, hard plastic, hard textured plastic for the interior. Now it was driver-centric or driver-focused, how they had the shape of the dash for the interior. They had the driver in mind, which was a really cool looking design, but it was all cheap, hard plastics. But because it was all cheap, hard plastics, these were convertibles, so they lasted the longest because of the cheap, thick, hard plastics doing the best in that sun compared to the materials of these other cars that I'm talking about today. This one here I would consider the cruiser of the group, and it was weighty, it was hefty. You could feel that weight, just like the SLK. And that was another one where you had to rely on getting some of your speed coming out of the corner. It wasn't powerful, and it didn't have the best handling. It was heavy. It had a nice, comfortable ride because of that, but I'm talking about ripping down the windy roads or in the infield of a track. You needed to rely on, there were 3 of these where you really needed to rely on knowing the lines of how to take turns, corners, and get speed coming out of the corner. And the Sky was one of them, or the Pontiac Solstice. They have the unique styling, the kind of, the humps behind the driver and passenger, almost like the Batmobile, gave it some unique styling. And I thought these two were, I'd say, within the top 1 or 2 when it comes to styling and how they look, the uniqueness. I didn't have it very long. It treated me right. It didn't give me any mechanical problems that I remember, but it was a real cool metallic bluish silver color. And that, along with the body style, it was really neat to look at. I also believe that these 2 cars are the most overlooked. And if you're looking for an entry-level sports car, definitely include them in the group to look at. All right, let's move on to number 5, and then I'll give you a bonus, and that one is going to be my absolute favorite of the group. So number 5 is going to be the Nissan 350Z. The Z had a 3.5-liter naturally aspirated V6, 280 to 316 horsepower. It was a beast. Rear-wheel drive, 6-speed manual or a 5-speed automatic transmission, and it was kind of a front mid-engine vehicle. And the one I had was a hardtop. I believe they did come in a convertible, but mine was a coupe. It was the only one in the group that it was a hardtop. This was definitely the most powerful of the group when it comes to sheer power. And the only one that was closer to 300 horsepower or above, I think it was 304 or 305 horsepower. Definitely want the manual version of all of these cars that I'm talking about today. Not only because of the fun factor, but longevity, durability, and maintaining the vehicle's cheaper because those automatic transmissions in some of those are pretty damn crappy. At 33 or 3,400 pounds, almost 3,500 pounds for a little entry-level sports car, this was definitely the heaviest of the group. And it, however, did a fantastic job the way they had the suspension set up. And if you had good tires, it was stuck to the road. This one here, sitting in the interior, had the best visibility of the group. What does that mean? Looking around, backing the vehicle up, seeing around tight turns, just your overall visual driving the vehicle front and back was the best in this vehicle. It also has a great community. There are a lot of groups, Facebook groups, a community of groups that own these cars, younger individuals, very, very passionate, and I love to see that. A great car. These things take a beating, they get customized, and because of the younger group that are into them, they do get thrashed around. And there are race car groups, there are racing events that are centered around this car, more popular than the other ones that I'm mentioning. Just an overall very fun car and one to consider as an entry-level sports car. I'm having fun with this list. I'm going to give you 2 more instead of 5 and a bonus. I'm going to give you the one that I didn't have very long, but I'll share as much experience as I can with it. So that's going to be the Toyota MR2, early 2000, or 3rd gen, and that was a Spyder. The nimble and lightweight MR2 had a 1.8-liter ZZFE inline 4, 138 horsepower, 126 foot-pounds torque, standard 5-speed transmission. Not the most attractive of this group, inside or out. And because it just didn't really grab me visually, and it was just a black color, it was a silver color, I didn't have it very long. This one, though I liked it because it didn't have a ton of power. I think it had the least amount of power in the group. Because of that, you had to have skill to drive it if you wanted to get some speed out of it and have some fun. And this one, with low power, you needed to be able to carry speed out of a corner. You needed to know how to take a turn. You know, if you're in the infield of Pocono, you needed how to take the lines. You needed some knowledge of driving. And if you didn't have that, it forced you to have it if you wanted to keep up. Because on the straightaway, these cars are pulling away, which means you had to catch up or do your passing in and around the turns. And the MR2 was great for teaching young individuals how to drive. Cheap materials inside and out with those horrible looks, and it did not sound good at all. Some of these that I mentioned have a great sound to them, and you can tweak the sound. You can tweak the exhaust system to make them sound even better. This one, you couldn't do anything to make it sound better. You made it louder, you made it sound even worse. So for the MR2, the more quiet it was for me, the better it was to drive. I think I only had it for 2 or 3 months through the summer, and then sent that one on down the road. I need to include that into this group because I think it is a car to look into as an entry-level sports car for around the $7,000 mark. By the way, before we go on to the next one, I do have a compliment for the MR2. Besides, I like it because you needed to learn how to drive it. It was hands down the most reliable of the bunch, not giving you problems. Durable, reliable, parts weren't hard to get for it, parts weren't crazy expensive to maintain it and upkeep, and that I really had to give it. And that's why another reason why I include it in this group for you to look into. Now we can get to the last vehicle in this group, the bonus, and this happens to be hands down my absolute favorite of the group. And I never thought this car looked good in the early 2000s, but the early 2000s Porsche Boxster. This vehicle had 4 trim packages: the base, the S, the GTS, and the Spyder S. 300 horsepower, 350 horsepower, 394 horsepower, 393 horsepower for the Spyder RS. 6-speed manual transmission, or the 7-speed PDK, or, as they say, the Doppelkupplung dual clutch automatic trans. You know how the headlights come down and come around? There are kits where you can black that out and make it look like it has the oval headlight, but it looked so goofy. I think as time goes by, it looks better and better. Let me know down in the comment section if you agree. And I probably wouldn't even black out the part that shoehorns off towards the center of the car. I like the way it looks now after all this time. It was my absolute favorite to look at, to sit in. It was the most comfortable. It was the most fun to drive in the corners, and it had the best balance of having the power along with the cornering ability, spending a long period of time. I drive a lot, and when I go and enjoy my toys, I take them on long drives. And I think that was one, if these were all sitting side by side and somebody said I had to be out in it for 6 hours straight, it would be the Porsche Boxster. I would jump in right away because I loved being in that cabin. It was a manual transmission. Now, the interior was boring as hell. There was no style to it. It was just, seemed like it was there. The materials were okay. It was very comfortable sitting in the seat, and you had plenty of room in the cabin. But just the design of the interior was nothing to be desired. The exterior, again, is growing on me more and more. Now, this vehicle, I think, would be the best value of the group, meaning if you get one, it'll keep that value for it. You know, if you pay $7 grand for one, $8 grand for one, and you keep it in good shape and maintain it, you're not going to lose money when you go to sell it down the road. Maybe they might even be worth more, depending on the mileage. The one drawback, they are expensive to upkeep and maintain with parts and labor. Just something I thought I would mention. So that's my list. I would love you to add to the list if the videos do fine, I'm going to keep going and give you more. I have more to give you, more examples of entry-level sports cars to look into. And we could play with the value. You know, we could do $10,000 to $20,000 sports cars to, you know, maybe not entry-level, maybe expensive sports cars. We can really play with this idea. But this group here, I've had an experience myself, and I can recommend them. So I hope that helps. Let me know what you think of these series talking about cars. I could do this all day, every day. I absolutely love cars, and I love to share my experience with them with you. Again, this has been Brian from Apex Auction Car Reconditioning, and I'll catch you in the next video.